Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. You either make excuses or you choose to level up. Amazing guests living the big ticket life. Woo! Woo! Brandon Brittingham.
Appreciate you having me here today, man.
It's that kind of discernment, that kind of focus, that kind of forward thinking that's so important if you're going to succeed in business today.
Jeff and I are like friends. We're real friends.
We are And so you unlock fortune and freedom without all the stress that normally comes along with it.
It all comes down to your why. Your business, why are you doing it? How is it going to change the world and what's it going to do for your family?
I want you to celebrate your success.
Talk about the struggle. But I promise you, the story is in your struggle.
They'll never be able to say that about me because people only see me working hard at anything that I'm doing whenever they see me.
Focused on your success and the success of those around you.
But being that constant in your community, good or bad, whether things are great in the community, bad in the community, who's steady?
Unapologetically do business and life on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. Amazing guests living the big ticket life. And we discuss how they do it and the big ticket methods they use. The things that make your life successful so you do life and business on your terms.
In and of itself, the only limitations that we really have on ourselves is the ones that we allow to be put on ourselves. And most people don't look at it in that perspective.
There's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower and letting people know who you are.
Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. All right. Dennis Morolda, welcome to the show, my friend. I'm excited to have you on this week. Excited to dig into what you have to offer, man. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. So this show, we titled it Building Strength and Resilience. It's not about fitness. Our title card for the video show, which, by the way, if you pick this up on audio, we do a video show each week, live streamed on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We pull out the audio. So if you're picking it up on audio, that's why you might hear things a little differently. You should always check out the video because you pick up a different depth of the conversation through video. But our title card entitled the show Building Strength and Resilience is not so much about physical fitness as it is maybe about mental fortitude, mental reinvention, focus for our young men of today. I think that's a fair way to say what we're going to dig into, right, Dennis?
Love that. That's a good title. Solid.
Yeah. So we were introduced and connected. I believe it was Jason Skisick, I think.
It was.
Who had introduced us. Yeah. And so we got introduced, had a call. We've texted back and forth a couple times since, and now we're here today on the show. And I think this is a really important topic. If you've got a young teenage boy in your home, you've got a grandson, a nephew, a son, a neighbor kid down the street, kids in your community, this is a real important show to tune into. I'll kick it off with, I've seen what Dennis is going to talk about, how Dennis helps young men. I've seen this coaching on the football field. I coached youth football for 6 years. And I'll tell you, there was nothing more heartbreaking than seeing a kid struggling with how to get along in life, even at a young age, because there was a lot of hardship in the home, be that a broken home, dad not around, dad not present, multitude of other issues. And the throughput was just seeing that young boy just totally saddened and heartbroken when dad wasn't at the game and he said he would be. And that was what kept my commitment to youth coaching around, to try to be, at least for the time we had together, that steady hand of leadership and trying to instill more than just what we practiced on the field into their character. So kudos to you for what you're doing. With that, I'll let you kick off with the pedigree, what brought us to today, what your background before this, all that good stuff.
You got it, my man. And just thanks again. Appreciate the opportunity. It was awesome to connect with you a couple months back. I've been really looking forward to the opportunity to chop it up with you a little bit. So building men, I guess there were two origin stories to it. The first would be my experience growing up. You mentioned the father coach figure. So a lot of the pain, the hurt, the trauma in my life was directly associated with my father being raised more in an abusive household. And he was the coach of many of my teams. And he was the coach where if I struck out, I was looking over my shoulder with tears in my eyes, worried about what was waiting for me in the dugout after that experience. He was the guy that was yelling and screaming on the way home. It was just a lot of really challenging experience, especially in my middle school years, Jeff. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to eventually get into education, to be an educator, to be a coach. So as I'm growing up, I have three siblings. My youngest sibling is my brother, Anthony, who's been a co-host on several of the Building Men podcasts that I've done. And he was 14 years younger than me. And so I was raised in a space where I have this little, kid coming into my life as I'm entering high school, as I'm his older brother, but I also recognize I'm going to do whatever I can to protect him from my father. And I'm going to do whatever I can to be a father figure to this kid, while I was in high school. So I was growing up quickly, when I should have been out partying and doing other things. A lot of how I was raised, like for me, was helping my younger brother not experience the same things that I did. So fast forward, I'm very involved in sports in high school and into college. I wound up playing baseball in college. Love the teamwork aspect. Always loved coaching. And one of the reasons I got into teaching was I wanted to eventually coach kids in some capacity: football, basketball, baseball. And so while I'm in school, as a baseball player, my majors were elementary education, and I had a coordinate major in sociology. And in the sociology major, Jeff, I did this internship at a halfway home for at-risk boys in South Jersey. And these boys were in this program because they were either the victims of physical or sexual abuse or neglect, or they had gotten in trouble with the law. And so the court said, you need to go to a program that will help you understand basically, how to operate productively in society. So I stumbled into this internship, and I was learning some tricks of the trade with group and individual counseling with at-risk boys. And then it turned into they hire me as a van driver. So now I'm 21 years old. I'm a college kid, and I'm driving this big white van into really rough areas in South Jersey, picking these kids up, and spending 7 or 8 hours with them almost every single day, learning how to help kids manage through challenging situations. And these were kids that had gone through the ringer in their lives. And then before you know it, the van rides home, Jeff, the kids were opening up to me and talking to me about things that they weren't sharing with these clinically trained social workers and therapists, because I had developed this level of trust and community with the boys. And then they're like, can you take the long way home? Can I be the last one that gets dropped off so I have some time to talk with you about what's going on? So I always thought this is a little bit of a calling to me. It's like some things that were pulled into, some things were pushed into. This was something that I was really drawn to, really helping kids overcome some type of challenge in their life. So fast forward, I get into teaching. It's serendipitous. Yesterday, it was the anniversary. So I started teaching my first week teaching. My third day was September 11th of 2001 in Central New Jersey. So I was a 6th grade teacher, and I had several kids in my classroom that they were really pervasively impacted by the attacks in the World Trade Center. So I had 6 kids in the 3 classes that I taught and lost a family member. And so it was at that time, Jeff, that I recognized the importance of safety in the classroom. I wholeheartedly believe in connection over curriculum, and knowing the kids that we teach is way more important than knowing the content that we teach. So it was at that time, I'm like, whatever I do in education moving forward, I'm going to find a way to establish a spot where kids feel safe. And when kids feel safe and we can help them mitigate a lot of those experiences, they're more likely to learn whatever it is that's in front of them. And so when I started as a teacher, I also loved leadership. I guess it was based on my experience growing up and having to take on a leadership role in my own family. And so I went back my first year as a teacher to get my master's degree to become a principal, right? I was barely in the classroom for a minute. And I fast tracked it. I got my master's in educational leadership. And after only 4 years in the classroom, I started as an assistant principal in Bordentown, New Jersey, central New Jersey, where I currently live. And so 2005, I started as an assistant principal. And as soon as I started, Jeff, I realized right away, 90% of my day was with like 30 boys. And most of the challenges in the school were the boys coming to school late or not coming at all, getting into fights, getting tossed out of class for being disrespectful. And what I decided to do was I started a boys social group, much like I was running or being a part of with the at-risk boys. And I recognized right away all these kids needed a spot. They needed a space to be connected to a group, a tribe, a community. And a lot of the things they were experiencing were very similar to things that I experienced, but I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And so when I first started, and then I'll tell you a little bit about, how we ran the meetings, and then I'll pause it because I'm sure you have a lot there. But when I first started the Building Men group, I asked the boys in the group, and I had almost all the boys in my school join. I said, tell me about what it means to be a man. Like, how would you describe what is a man? And these are kids that are 13, 14 years old. This is back in 2005. And they told me things that it was likely my father would probably tell me if he had an opportunity. He would say, well, you got to be the best athlete. You got to be bigger, faster, stronger. You got to have the six pack, be able to bench more, fight people. It was like athletic conquest or athletic dominance. And then they said, well, the next thing to be a great man is you got to be with the most girls, or you got to be with the hottest girls in the school. Right. Then it was like this like sexual conquest. And then finally it was, you need to have the stuff, the material things, the car, the house, the bling, the whatever it was. So then it was like a accumulation of material things. And so that's what they thought. The boys were like, that's the man if you could do all those things. And I looked at them and I'm like, you know what? If that's what you're basing your manhood or your masculinity around, they could all be taken away. So let's adjust that. Let's reframe it and reshape it into things that are inherent about who we are as human beings that could never be taken away. So what if we base it on, being accountable for ourselves and for others, for being authentic, for having courage, confidence, respect, resilience, self-discipline? What if we based our masculinity around service to others? Those are things that people could never take away from us. And after 1 year, Jeff, of running that program, the suspension rate in 1 year dropped 75%. The kids were getting better grades after being a part of the program. They were not getting thrown out of class. They were coming to school on time. And it was at that moment I recognized, all right, I'm going to do something with this. I'm not sure what, but I'm going to do something with this in my life. So that's where I'll pause it for a sec.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot to dig into there. And I'll start with this first by saying this isn't going to be a show just about, at-risk teenage boys. You can, just put your thinking cap on as a leader, and you can translate this to the people you lead and you manage in your business and in your life, right? Like when you talked about taking extra time in the van, dropping kids off, how hard is it as a leader to take that time with the people you manage, the employees you have in your business, and create that extra 5-mile detour in the day? Maybe it's not 5 miles, maybe it's 5 minutes, right? Do you have to extract that? You got 7 hours and 55 minutes from this person of work today. You can't give them 5 minutes to connect, right? Like that would be my challenge as we navigate our conversation, as you listen to it, is not just think about it through the lenses by which we're going to discuss, but take it and apply it to your life. Obviously, if you have a young teenager at home, absolutely connective, but you don't have to work that hard to connect the dots elsewhere in your life. That's my point. The suspension rate going down, 30 kids being the most problematic. I think there's a lot of places in our society, schools included. But you look at your neighborhood, you look at your workplace. It's probably, what was just out of curiosity, do you recall the population of your high school where you dealt with those same 30 kids? Just the average.
The number of students that were in the school?
Total number, yeah.
So when it was the junior high school where I started as the assistant principal, I had about 450 kids.
Okay. So I'm just a big fan of the 80-20 rule and how fractal it is. So 80% of the kids would never ever be a problem. 20% would be, you said 460,
Yeah, 450, 460, right around there.
450. All right, let's say 450 for easier math. So 90 kids would kind of get on your radar, and then take out another 80% of that get on your radar and get off pretty quick because they don't like it. And then that 20% of 90 is 18, right? And so it's just always interesting to me how that 80-20 rule exists. And I bring that up because so often as leaders, we go and instead of just dialing in to the real heart of the issue and creating a connective solution, as you did for those 30 kids, and you got a tremendous result, we apply this broad sweeping reform to everybody. Right. And I think that's where we just, we never address the root of the problem. We say we got this policy over here, we got this rule over here, we got this process over here, but it doesn't ever address this little micro audience that is this thorn in the side that we know if we just pluck the thorn out and, insert it into that space, what that person really needs, we could actually have a much happier ecosystem, whether that's at school, whether that's at work, whether that's at home. So just interesting math there that I always kind of like to sometimes work through,
and real
think
quick,
about.
Jack, too, while a majority of the time was spent with those 30 boys, when I started the Building Men program, I had over 200 boys. So it was almost, say if we had 225 boys in the school, it was probably 190 boys joined up. So it wasn't just the at-risk kids, quote unquote. And I've heard someone call them not at risk anymore, like at reward or at promise, right? Reframing how we're looking at kids that are struggling in some capacity. It's instead of a problem, what if we looked at it as an opportunity to help a kid that might be struggling in some capacity, right? And so when I started, I ran 10 groups of about 20 boys in each group. So it wasn't just the kids that were, the kids that were getting suspended or getting tossed out of class or failing. It was all the boys. And they started to recognize that they had a lot of similar things in common as far as like what they were worried about. A lot of boys in middle school are worried about their body image. A lot of the boys are worried about looking weak. They're worried about failure. They fear what's coming in their future, much like we all fear, right? As men, if you're listening to this, there's probably times in your life that you felt the same way. But if I'm a 13, 14-year-old, one, it's not normalized for me to share those things because I'm afraid of getting made fun of or getting picked on or looking vulnerable. And then two, having a spot to do that, where I'm not going to do that in my language arts class or my math class. So where could a kid potentially share those things? Are they going to go to the guidance counselor and be labeled as a kid who's going to see the guidance counselor? So I opened it up to all the boys in the school, and almost every single one of the boys joined that program. So it was very comprehensive, and having said that, there were a lot more intensive interventions to some kids that really, really needed it. So I would spend a little bit more time. But I think that's where the magic happened, was opening up to the boys and them seeing, wow, I might be a white kid who lives in this house on the top of the hill with this, and then I'm in this group with a kid who's struggling, who, might be in a different socioeconomic class than me, but we're all afraid of the future. We're afraid of these specific things, or we have these similar things in common. So by them understanding that the tribal aspect, being part of that group, they were like, you know what, we can support one another. We can lean on one another. And then not only did they not want to disappoint me as far as discipline is concerned, they didn't want to let each other down. And then they didn't want to let themselves down either, which was a really cool thing to see.
So, again, here's something to take away, not just if you're dealing with teenagers and teenager boys specifically, but how did you create that accountability amongst each of them? What did that look like, and how did you build that up?
I think the first thing was, as soon as we sat down, we set up the room, and they were responsible for doing it when they would go to whatever classroom we were holding the meeting. They set up the room in a circle. It wasn't like front of the class, back of the class. It was a circle. There are no corners. Everything has an equal part in what we're doing. We started every meeting with a handshake. Every young man had to shake hands with every other young man in the room to start the meeting and to end the meeting. And it was a handshake like, you're going on a job interview, or you're meeting your girlfriend's father for the first time. So we talked about, like, this is a very ceremonial thing that's going on here. And then what we started to do was say, okay, things that are said here are going to stay here. Like, this is a space where we're able to come in and talk about the things that are going on. So the conversations are not fodder for classroom discussion or cafeteria discussion. And then basically I told the boys, you can tell me things, and as long as you're not a danger to self or to others, it's safe in the space. So they knew those things going in. And then as the weeks went on with the groups, I started to give them this like responsibility in what was going on. So I believe in a gradual release of responsibility. I do, then we do, and then you do. So then they started
Mm.
to hold some accountability for the group. So it might be that they needed to bring something to share with the rest of the group that they're really proud of, or it could be that they had to bring a book or a poem or something that inspires them to talk about. And so not only were we talking about presenting and classroom discussions and public speaking as part of what we're doing, we were also talking about, like, how do we go about leading a group, right? It's not something that we're really talking about in education. Like, we're not talking about how do you lead a group, but could be a big part of their life. How do you manage conflict? If there's a disagreement, how can we do this in a respectful, productive way? Not assuming that when kids are working together in a group, they're going to know how to do that. So we would talk about everything, all the real life things that kids needed. I would teach them how to tie a tie. I would teach the kids how to change a tire and jump a car, like things that no one taught me how to do those things. I needed to learn for myself. So we're doing that in a group. And Jeff, these kids now, they're 31, 32 years old. And I'll see some of these kids at the gym across the street from my house, and they'll come up to me, they'll shake my hand, Mr. Morolda, I still remember everything that we did in Building Men. I took a lot of those lessons that we and I'm putting them into practice in my own life with my own family now, which is a really rewarding thing for me to say.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, I spent 6 years very casual. I mean, in comparison to your efforts and your focus, 6 years very casually involved for 3 months at a time, a few days a week, handful of days a week with these kids. Just last night, I had the opportunity to shake the hand of one of the kids I coached for 3 years, I think it was. And, it's interesting, the handshake thing. I don't do fist bumps with the kids. I do a handshake.
Same.
And I've noticed, because this young man, same thing. He put his hand out to me, and I noticed it, and like, cool. I hope that's translating elsewhere in his life, and I'm sure it is, because he's a good kid. It's so cool to see those rewards, and I'm sure your efforts are even more magnified because you've just had more considered focus. Let's kind of make a little bit of a left turn. You talked about what kids are getting in the classroom, and this isn't meant to be rough on teachers and administration and education today, because there's a lot coming at them. I mean, you said in 2005, the problems that young men viewed as being a man, being a leader in life, those are the same problems today. They're just amplified 10x because of social media, because of the distraction of our society that we have, the low attention span, the constant desire to be at the top of everything and be that leader of everything that really doesn't matter, right? I mean, if you want to lead yourself in a physically fit way, so be it. But it doesn't really matter that you have, 20-inch biceps and the person beside you has 19. It doesn't really matter. If you're physically fit and you feel good about yourself, that's what matters. And you're doing everything you can in regard. That's what matters. So today's educators in our system is really up against some stuff. So how does it balance, right? Because if educators are up against some things in society, is there culpability of the system? Is it culpability of the student? Is it culpability of the parents? Is it all of it? How do you unpack all that?
Yeah, it's a combination thereof. I was a principal for 14 years in central New Jersey in a couple different areas. And one thing that I certainly recognize is, closer that we got to current time frame, the less accountable kids were, and the more entitled they became. And a lot of it was not only, and I'll get into the school in a second, but parents not allowing their kids to experience challenging situations. I'm such a huge proponent of letting your kids experience failure, letting them struggle, and help them understand that there's such power in the perseverance. There's so much research. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab podcast, and he spoke recently about a book by Carol Dweck, Dr. Carol Dweck, who wrote a book called Mindset. I would highly recommend this book if you interact with any human beings. And one of the things that Carol Dweck talks about is whenever we're giving feedback, give feedback based on the effort rather than the identity. So instead of saying you're so smart, you're the best athlete, you're the best softball player, you're the best, talk about you work really hard, you're really resilient. When you give feedback based on effort, the output of whoever you're working with, it's like 10x. And so what I talk to parents about all the time is help your kids understand it's more about the process than it is about the product. Think about this too, Jeff. When our kids are younger, they're trying to learn how to walk for the first time, right? The kid's crawling around. They finally get up and they're wobbling around a little bit. They take a step and they fall down. The way that parents are as kids get older, it's like, okay, you gave it a shot. Let's move on to something different. Let's try something different. What do we do when they're little kids? Give it another shot. Try again. And they're going to walk and they're going to fall and they're going to take another step and they're going to fall. That's where the learning happens. And so as kids get older, we don't allow them the opportunity. And it's such a gift to give kids to fail without the repercussion of getting in trouble for whatever the failure is. In schools, what I think schools should do is you give kids a test on something and they get 6 out of 10 right, give it back to them and learn those 4 things that you got wrong and then turn it back into me. You turn it back into me and you did the work and you learned and you understood, you get 100 on whatever the test is. And there's no problem with that. I truly believe that. I think like give kids an opportunity to fail and learn and fail and learn, failing forward. So that's one piece is like, what can we do as parents to really help kids? And with schools are such an antiquated thing. I mean, schools haven't changed all that much besides the introduction of technology than when they were first introduced in this country in like the late 1800s, when it was like, compulsory education. Schools haven't changed all that much. So what can we do to help kids? Think about schools right now. Line up at the door, come in, sit in the row, keep your mouth closed, raise your hand, stop talking, no playing. And what do kids need? Especially boys, they need movement. They need an opportunity to explore and investigate and have adventures. So for schools, what can we do to allow things like that to happen? Kids are rewarded for being the quote unquote good kid. And what does the good kid mean? They sit down quietly, they raise their hand, they walk in a straight line, they give a teacher the answer that they're looking for. So if I'm the teacher, I have in mind what my thought is, and I'm just waiting for the kid to reciprocate that back to me or to regurgitate that back to me. What about for the kids who like to move, who like adventure, who like to push back and to say, wow, I don't agree with that, and here's why? That's a great thing. I would rather hire someone that in my organization than a good kid who's going to stand in line and just do whatever is told.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much that I agree with. One thing you said that kind of surprised me, if I'm being 100% honest with you, on the test thing.
Yeah.
So we'll circle back to that. But yeah, I mean, I think creating environments by which different kids can learn. I mean, this is a big thing for me with our school district because it's so personal. My oldest boy was so close to just disaster for himself because of the pressure of being put on a college prep path. And he's a career kid. And I mean, it manifested to him saying, I think I want to kill myself. I'm so tired of all this. And I was in 9th grade.
Wow.
And the day we got approval, because at the time, now our current superintendent is immensely supportive of being ready for life. How do we say it locally? Being ready for life ready, college ready, career ready. So that means if you're just going to graduate high school, we want you to be ready for that. And you're not going to do anything else. If you're going to graduate high school and go into a trade or a skill kind of post-secondary education, like a 2-year trade school, we want you to be ready for that. If you're going to go to college, we want the best footing for you to succeed in college. And I love all of that. But prior to his involvement in leading our district, man, it was tough. We had to fight for that 10th grade approval to go to Career Center. We had to fight for it. And when we got it, I'm like, we just saved their kid's life.
Yeah. It's a heavy lift.
And so I think creating these environments for kids to succeed is really important. Well, let's make sure we touch on the what you're seeing and what your take is on the evolution of AI technology, how our kids are using it and what they're seeing, what they're used to versus what their teachers, and how the education system might grade it. Because I'm already seeing conflict in that. But on the test taking thing, so it's interesting to me. I'm a fan of prepare for the test, and what the score may be, the score is. I still want learning thereafter. My view is you got to take the 6 out of 10. Now, maybe you create opportunity to continue to learn beyond that, but I think the 6 out of 10 stands. That's kind of my take. So, your take, obviously, I think I heard you correctly, is retake the test. And if you get 4 more right, if you get those 4 right, and you got 100. So explain to me what you're seeing there. Obviously, you have a basis of result and education behind that. Just let's expand on that a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we could get into, I'd like to circle back if you're cool with it eventually, how this could impact your larger audience with just developmental needs that kids have, but it associates really nicely with just people's needs in general. And people's needs are autonomy, competence, fun, relationship, and safety. And whenever I'm working with any group, I keep those things in mind. Autonomy, your voice is heard. Competence, you feel good about what you're doing, that you feel like you're successful. Fun, relationships, and safety. So when I think about, and this is, Jeff, this is something that I would say is new in my world. I didn't have this view when I was a principal, but it's something that I've worked my way into. So when we think about what our goal is when we put a learning objective in front of the student, my hope would be our goal is whatever the objective is for them to learn that, to be really, really passionate, excited about it, whatever it is, and to see it all the way through. For human beings, when there is a task in front of you and you perceive this task to be challenging, you think, okay, whatever this is that I'm going to do, this is a challenging task in front of me. If I take on this task and I complete the task knowing that it's hard for me to do this, what it does is it develops these neural pathways in our brain that it's like laying down tracks that another train could potentially follow. And I'll wrap it back together in a second. So as I do something that I know is challenging, and I might be met with some challenge and fail at it and fail at it and fail at it, but I keep going whatever it is, and I come to the end of it, and I'm able to find success in whatever the challenge is in front of me. What it does, the next time that I do something challenging, I'm more likely to continue on the task and complete it to fruition. Conversely, if I start something that's hard and I give up, there's a block there. I'm like, you know what, this was hard. I did a little bit. I got 60%, whatever, no big deal. And I stop. My brain develops this like chasm or like a cliff there, to where the next time that something's challenging, I either stop or it's so much harder for me to go through it the next time. So my retort against that, or my pushback, if I were to go back and tell myself 5-10 years ago, what is my goal for the kid, experiencing whatever it is? Are there going to be times where there's like a time step, like this is what it is, like we have a culminating experience, is the last time we're doing it? Okay, but on a regular basis, if a kid doesn't do something, if they're incorrect, and my goal is for them to learn, if I'm like, you have the choice now, again, need for autonomy, you can take this, go back and learn these 4 things and submit it back to me. Do I want someone in my organization that I'm like, I'm going to give you something to do, and if you get half of it right, half of it wrong, you're like, that's it, I'm done? Or I want someone that's like, you know what, there were 5 that I didn't get right. God damn it, I'm going to work hard and get these next 5, and I'm going to learn, because those 5 things that I got incorrect that I learn about can help me in my future life. That to me shows a lot of like stick-to-itiveness, determination, resiliency. Those are the things that I want to honor. I think in education, it's so much based on a standardized test and, checking these boxes. It's one of the reasons why I left public education, Jeff, is because I was told in a district, like, listen, enough with the groups. We need to raise our test scores. And I'm like, I don't like, for me, I want the kids to be successful, but I'm more interested in them being successful in the game of life rather than on a, a test that's going to be published in a newspaper. To me, that really didn't matter to me all that much, which is why I'm not a principal anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are some folks in life that we are just so opposite in everything, but we could jam out on our mutual dissatisfaction and disdain for standardized test scores. I'll put it that way. Yeah, I mean, I think so. We'll put a bow on the testing and the makeup and everything. I think we're really kind of saying the same thing. In that 6 out of 10 example, I'm all for kids having that opportunity to understand how they improve that score, how they improve it. I think for me, if I'm in a classroom, I do want to create that opportunity to learn, because I do want that competency, because that's what our world rewards today. Competency, not certificates, right? We want competent high school graduates. We don't want a bunch of kids that could memorize things on a PSSA test here in Pennsylvania, right? So we want competent individuals. So I think for me, if I'm leading a classroom, I'm going to let that 6 out of 10 stand on the grade book, but I'm also going to be working with those students to say, look, you have opportunity to bring that grade up. You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to, and here's how we're going to help you understand where that 4 out of 10 missed the mark. Let's help you understand better how we missed the 4 out of 10 mark. Let's help understand. And I think that same thing happens with employees. I know I deal with it in my retail business. I'm always looking to work with the language our team uses with our customers, because if we get really good at it and we look to consistently level up, we have a better and better and better buying experience, while those little pitfalls become less and less and less. And it's never, and something came to mind as you were sharing your thoughts on, where the score stands with a test and everything. I really work hard to never, we can have negative conflict in the workplace, but I really work hard to move forward and learn from it, but never remind of the heartache, the frustration, the pain that was around that first issue. And I think as a leader, that's really important. Like, you can take the learning lesson, but you don't have to drudge up the pain of it all and the frustration of it all. I'll let you add some thoughts. We can move on.
Yeah. And just to close the loop on that from my perspective too. So, it could be that there's a happy medium there, Jeff, too. So if it's, the 6 out of 10 stands, so the 4 that you got incorrect, that's a separate assessment, and those 4 you can get 100 on. Right.
Yeah.
So the 4 that you didn't get
100%.
right. So we could make it work in some capacity. But to me, it's more about, like, are the kids learning that as there's a challenging task that exists in front of them, are they going to be like, yeah, I'm okay if I don't learn it, or this is the task, I'm going to see this through to fruition, and it develops this level of perseverance and resilience. It's such an important piece as they're growing into their adult lives, and things are not going to be easy. You're going to deal with a lot of stuff in your life. Are you the person that gives up, or are you the person that's like, I'm seeing this number one?
Yeah. Well, and to use your child learning how to walk analogy, the mental picture that came into my mind there is, as parents, we don't immediately go and pick up that little toddler, right? We kind of let them figure it out. Maybe as they're learning. I know with ours, I think we put 2 diapers on them as they started to learn to walk throughout the day, just for a little extra padding as they hit the ground, right? Yep. And we, I think we had those bumpers you put around your fireplace, so they don't crack their head open on the fireplace mantle, right? In other words, as a parent, you created these things that you couldn't completely accident-proof the house. That's just impossible with a toddler. But you can take precautions. I think today the propensity is to create this injury-free zone for our children. We got to let them fall on the ground and hurt their butt as they sit down.
100%.
Jeff, if they hit their head on that mantle, okay, it's going to hurt a little bit, but you know, they're going to feel it, but we don't need to go do stitches because we as the adults put the bumpers out there. I think the lesson is we got to point out to where the pitfalls in life are for our kids, for our learners, for the people we lead, but we can't go step across it for them.
Oh, Jeff, I absolutely love that. So quick quote, and then I'll follow up with an idea, like more of an analogy for your audience. Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson says, especially for young men, we have to let them do dangerous things carefully. We need to let them try to, you know, stand up on the top of the monkey bars, but like, let's think about all the things that could potentially happen, but let's let them do these dangerous things carefully, because kids, boys especially, they need that adventure in their life. When I think about our role as parents, Jeff, I'm going to use the analogy of a lighthouse, right? As a parent, it's my job to be a lighthouse for my kids. It's not my job to get in the boat and steer the boat for them. What I want to do is I'm there. I'm a supportive space. I'll shine the light on the treacherous waters. I'll shine the light on the jetty that's over here, the coastline. But it's up to the kids to see those things and to navigate the difficult waters by themselves. What that does is when they know they have the lighthouse there, that solid figure that will be there as things get challenging, but they're in the water, right? They're there. So they have to decide, am I going to take the light that's shining on this difficult thing? Am I going to take this, or am I going off on my own? And if you go off on your own, you still might find the shore somehow, but it's going to be a lot more challenging. It's difficult for us as parents because we don't want to see our kids, you know, get hurt. We don't want to see them fail. But them failing and understanding, I'm strong. I'm stronger than this is hard, or I'm stronger than this is whatever. That's where that's where the magic is right there. So if we can be a lighthouse for our kids, you know, that's a spot we need to be.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm going to write that one down. You might have noticed I forgot to say in the pre-show, and for everybody watching, and we do appreciate you watching. And if you do watch, you should subscribe. So we like that. But as you watch, if you see me jot things down, it's because I always carve out these little moments and snippets from the show, because there's always good points to be made and shared, and not everybody has the time to digest an hour at a time. But if I can give you 60 seconds to a couple minutes, that's helpful. And I try to be helpful around here, right? Let's try to do that for my folks. So at any rate, no, I love that analogy. Be the lighthouse for our kids. I really do. So let's talk about how our kids are greeting new technology that's in front of them. Right? Like I've often shared with folks when I have these discussions about how our kids are learning, the environments that they're in, the world that they're growing up in, like understanding the Pythagorean theorem is important, but being able to type that out on a Google sheet, because I use a Google sheet because that's like kids use Chromebooks all the time now. So that's the world they live in. But if you're an Excel person, please don't come at me. I understand Excel is a little better, but just to back off. But so like, let's teach them how to formulate profit margin using a Google sheet, right? In math class. Let's make it interesting about, hey, you're into sneakers? Cool. Let's talk about building a business, a theoretical business in math class around how you make money with sneakers. Or, okay, I know this is a problem. You want to be an influencer, a TikToker, a YouTuber? Cool. Let's talk about how you monetize that. Because contrary to what I think a lot of kids believe, and this might be too sweeping of a paint stroke, but I don't think I'm all that inaccurate. I think a lot think they can just get out of high school and because they got a phone in their hand and they've grown up in that technology, that they're going to instantly be wealthy. Right. And unless you catch a viral moment, and often those viral moments involve crashing into the shores where the lighthouse light isn't shining, it's really hard to catch that wave. So well, let me ask it this way. What are you seeing with new technology, artificial intelligence included, using technology or a benefit for kids? You obviously have a pedigree in education. If you were teaching today in a learning environment specifically, how are you leading that class? How are you leading your students?
And I mean, every time you think you have it, it's, there's 4 more iterations of more intricate advanced technologies that the kids have at their fingertips, right? And so I don't look at technology as inherently good or bad. It is what it is. It's what do we do with it? Like, what are our intentions when we're utilizing technology? The classroom of 2023, there is technology for kids on a regular basis, but are we using the technology as a crutch or to think for us, or are we using it as a tool to serve us? So I always ask, are you serving the technology, or is the technology serving you? I'll give you like a really easy example might be if I'm scrolling on TikTok and I'm basically caught up in an algorithm and they have me hooked in there and they're just going to, show me things that'll keep me on there a longer period of time. I'm serving the technology. I am the slave to the technology. Something as easy as an alarm that I'm going to set on my phone, that's done with intentionality. That technology is serving me and what I want to do for whatever the goal that I've set for myself. So I think what it comes down to is, are you serving it or is it serving you? That's the first thing. Second thing is, and I have a son who is in his freshman year at the University of Delaware. I have a daughter who's a sophomore in high school and a daughter who's in 8th grade in middle school. And so I see even how my kids are interacting with technology and what it's doing for them. And, for my girls, a conversation that I'm having with them on a frequent basis is the number of times, if you think about this, and this is something I'm working through the numbers. This is not an exact science, but I'm going to take an educated guess at it. When we're growing up, Jeff, I graduated high school in 1995, right? So I'm thinking back to myself as a teenage kid, late 80s, early 90s. How many times would I see myself during the course of a day, like to actually see a reflection of myself? Wake up in the morning, brush my teeth, get out of the shower, put some stuff in my hair, go to school, go into the bathroom a couple times during the day, whatever, 8 to 10 times during the day that I'm actually seeing my reflection, unless you had a mirror inside of your locker. So maybe 15 times a day. How many times now are kids seeing themselves? The reflection is the screen on their phone, right? I would argue that they're probably seeing themselves anywhere between 20 and 50 times every single hour that they're awake. And not only that, they're changing their appearance with different filters and whatever, make themselves look more attractive to who they're seeing. So in one day, potentially, a kid is seeing themselves, right? Likely more than we would have seen ourselves in 6 months when we were growing up. That really impacts kids' perception of what they're seeing. And so it also, it's not who they are. It's also like how others are seeing them. So it becomes this whole looking glass self. Kids don't view themselves on who they are or even who they see in the mirror. They think, I am who my friends see me as. And how are their friends seeing them? Whatever they're sharing out there on Snapchat or whatever it is. So there's a really interesting dynamic that's going on with the use of technology. Here's the other thing, and I'll speak to this more in the young men's realm, because I don't believe the percentages of girls watching pornography versus boys, it's way slanted in the boy direction, of course. But when we were younger, to view pornography, you'd have to like steal something from your dad's drawer and go out in the woods, or there was a kid who had a Playboy or something like that. So you might see a boob every once in a while, or maybe you watch something scrambled on the TV. Now, like a kid who's 13 years old will see more naked women, can potentially see more naked women in 24 hours than like the most powerful king in the history of the world could 500 years ago. Right. And so it's rewiring the kids' brains. Not only like they need to look a certain way, but also, especially with the boys, the pornography, it's like changing their whole idea of what a romantic relationship should be like. And then for girls, they need to live up to a certain standard. So there's so much there. So that technology for me, like, is that technology serving me or am I serving it? Boys are serving that technology. And if you have a teenage kid, if they have a device, if you think that they are not looking at pornography on a regular basis, you have to check that thought process, because they absolutely are. It's like 90 to 95% of kids that have technology, they are using it to look at something deviant like that.
There's not a thing that you've shared about how our kids connect with technology, how they respond in the classroom, how they respond to their environments today, that you couldn't read and be backed up if you go to Reddit, to the teachers subreddit on reddit.com. So reddit.com /r/teachers. There's not a thing you shared that couldn't be backed up there. So it's not just Dennis sharing it. It's just me sharing my viewpoints and my prompts of questions. Go get third party input. I can understand you have a good kid. I get it. Okay. And even if they aren't searching out these things, the kid next to him in class likely is, and likely they're overhearing it. And so at some point, even if the curiosity doesn't come into play, the frame of reference is there. I look around our community and when I'm out at football games and sporting events, man, as we look to wrap up our time, I guess a natural progression of building men is knowing you said 8th grade daughter.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there ever in your business plans a building women iteration of what you do?
So my partner Julie is a labor and delivery nurse, and she's going back to get her master's degree to become a psych mental health nurse practitioner. So she's involved in women's studies, and we've talked about creating an opportunity. I do believe there needs to be groups for girls. I do believe, I'm just not the one to deliver that information, obviously.
Right.
But it's so needed. The kids need to feel a part of something, a part of a community. So a lot of what I'm doing too, and even with my own girls, I think it's so important for young men to have a space to learn and to grow, not only for the sake of themselves and who they are and their young men community, but also for the females in their life, right? Like I want my daughters to be with someone who has gone through my program. Like I want someone, that to talk to, whoever is going to date my daughters in the future, if that's what they decide, to talk to them about accountability, authenticity, commitment, confidence, courage, humility, integrity. They need to be hearing those things. So it will not only we're supporting the boys, we are also supporting the females that they would potentially be with in the future.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love that. I'll share for anybody with a young daughter that comes across this. My friend Jessica Dennehy, she's been on our show. I think she was on the Women of Apex episode, and I'm 99.9% positive it was her. She was speaking at one of our events, and she shared one of the things she's most proudest of today, and that's all of her success is built 100% on her brain, her competency, and her work. Not 1 ounce has been built on her flesh. And I think when we look at these input factors that our young men are dealing with, pornography, social media personas that may or may not be things we agree with, the inputs they see, those inputs that women have are tremendously. You said there's a standard that the girls come to find and sometimes feel they have to live up to. And man, when Jessica said that, I was so immensely proud of that statement because first and foremost, I know it to be true. Like I know her work is great, but to say it in that way, I was like, yes, lay it down more, say it louder for everyone in the back.
Yeah.
Right. Because it just because you got it doesn't mean you have to show it. And you can be super successful with what's up here, what's in your heart, and what's in your ultimate desire to succeed. And I was just immensely proud of her for saying that.
I love that.
Yep. Man, I've enjoyed our time together. We're at the top of the hour. We've been flashing your information on the screen of how to connect with you. Let's talk a little bit about the Building Men program as we wrap up. But all your contact information is in the show notes. Let's first get out, how do people get a hold of you? And then let's talk about the Building Men program that meets a couple times a month.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. So the way you get in touch with me, my email address is buildingmencoach@gmail.com. The website is buildingmen.io. And then on there, you could find many different ways to connect. And on Instagram, I'm the most active. It's building.men. One thing that I'll put out there too is the things that I say, I call them the 3 thieves, the 3 things that can, steal away a young man's future. in no particular order, are resistance, distraction, and victimhood. So those are the three thieves that rob young men of successful futures: resistance, distraction, and victimhood. And my goal is to incorporate the character pillars that are up on the website and healthy habits to help them avoid those three thieves in their life. And, what can they do? And so what do? I work with individuals on a, coaching basis where I meet with them once a month, maybe twice a month. And then in my coaching, I also have a parent component where after I talk to the young man a couple times, I have a meeting with the parent, because a lot of times if they're struggling with something, we need to, flip over the seashells to figure out where the pearl is, basically. Because a lot of the times there's something that I can do to help the parents, help the kids as well. I have a group coaching. It's called The Foundation. It's up on the screen. Basically, we meet twice a month, and I invite on really awesome guest mentors that are really successful in some aspect of their life. It could be, physical fitness. It could be business. It could be their authors. So they come on, and I do a live interview with them, with the boys as the audience, and then they give a piece of advice and they answer questions. And I have these guest mentors on for about an hour twice a month. It's a really powerful thing. And then the other thing is I'm in schools right now as well. So I'm going into schools and I'm helping schools set up building men programs. I'll do it once a month or once every 2 months, where I'll go in and I'll facilitate a full day of building men meetings and then do some follow-up with a teacher. So if you're in a school in any capacity, if your kids are in a school, I do offer that service as well.
Yeah. So if you're on a PTO, if you're somebody who's involved at a school board level, or, you're a teacher on a curriculum committee, if you have any kind of inroad and you've liked any ounce of what Dennis has shared, which I would think if you've liked an ounce, you've liked a pound of what Dennis has shared. Please, pass this episode along, pass his contact information along, website along to those folks in your school that can bring them in. I mean, schools have budgets. They've got, often a school of a decent size has a 50, 60, 80, $100 million plus budget. And, Dennis is obviously somebody who needs to provide for himself, but the guess is there's budget there. And so please share this episode and push it out, and, send it to your teachers, send it to other parents that that might be active, and get it in front, because look, our teachers are busy, our educators are busy, and they, it's not possible to just know everything that's out there as far as answers and solutions go for our kids. So put this in their hands. That would be my ask of our time today, and to push forward Dennis's time into my audience today. So Dennis, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was my pleasure, dude. It was an honor to be here. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, thank you everybody for listening and watching this show. Please do subscribe, like, follow, whatever channel it is, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook that you listen to. If you're an audio only type person and you're a podcast purist, hey, give us a like on your favorite platform, follow us, subscribe as well. And if you could rate the show, we'd really appreciate it. Dennis, thank you again. Really appreciate your time. Everybody else, go out there, do life and business on terms this week, on your terms this week, that is. Take care.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Big Ticket Life. You've heard from another amazing guest living their own big ticket life, and now it's time to live yours. First, I'd love for you to take me up on my free gift to you. Claim your gift at gift.thebigticketlife.live. That's gift.thebigticketlife.live. See, all your life you've been told what is and what isn't possible by the loudest voices from the cheapest seats. It's time to finally do life and business on your terms. Sure, you've heard similar things, but without clarity on what can be done, it's easy to have your customers, employees, maybe even partners, and your spouse keep you from truly living a big ticket life. My big ticket methods shift you into that investor seat in your business, away from commodity and away from competition, into a market of one, so you can finally live your own big ticket life. So my gift to you is for you to book your discovery call today, where we'll uncover first the Chivo behaviors, those chief everything officer behaviors that hold you back, and why moving into the investor seat in your own business is critical. 2, we'll uncover the premium position that's up for grabs right now in your market that you're missing out on. And 3, which big ticket methodologies are just waiting to be dropped into your business to explode your sales and profits. So again, thanks for listening to this episode. I'd love for you to take action right now. Accept this gift. Book your call. Go to gift.thebigticketlife.live. Again,